Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Monday night panel, albeit a Tuesday night. We can't start this without paying our tributes to Alan McLoughlin, who passed away. We send our condolences, and our thoughts are with his family, his friends, and his colleagues at the Academy, and all the players that he has brought through. Looking at the tributes on Facebook and Twitter, it's amazing how many people lives he's touched, and it's very, very sad. So rest in peace, Alan, and sleep well. Okay, so let's bring on Vic. Hi, Vic.
Hi, good evening to you, Chris. A very sad evening for anybody connected with Swindon Town Football Club, and indeed we should not forget the Republic of Ireland, Portsmouth, Southampton as well. Wonderful player, wonderful man, and our condolences, of course, go to his family, to his teammates, and to his friends. Great man, Alan McLoughlin.
Okay, so tonight we've got Tom Jones, we've got James Spencer, and we've got Johnny Leafield. So let's start. So we'll bring on Tom, we'll bring on James, and we'll bring on Johnny. Hi.
Hi, guys.
I'll leave you in Vic's very capable hands, and I will catch you all a bit later.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. I think it's only right that we start in one place and one place only tonight. Tom, you, a teammate, of course, of Alan McLoughlin. We send our very best wishes to you and to all the other teammates from that great side of 89-90. We've now lost John Gittins and Alan McLoughlin, two members of that great side. You were saying just now, I said when you joined Swindon, Alan was already there, and he was one of the early people to meet you then.
Yeah, that's right. Watched the game, and then we got a phone call from Lou Macari, and the young lads then used to stay in the hostel just off the back of Shrivenham Road, and they got a call to come back. That's where I really met Alan, for the first time. We got on like a house on fire. We did a load of running together, as Louis would want a young lad to do, and obviously I was a new player, so he wanted me to do a bit of workout with the guys. But Alan was one of the top players, and not just a top player, but one of the best guys in football that I've ever met.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and I think it's hit everybody today. How did you first hear? Obviously, you knew he was ill, and there was a great fundraiser for the Loathed Strangers Shield at the County Ground on the Sunday for the Prospect Foundation. How did you first hear the news today?
Yeah, it was my wife made a phone call to me at work around about 3:00 and said that Alan had passed away, and it's just devastating for him, his family, close friends, and we all send our condolences.
What was Alan like as a teammate? You were part of that great side that Aussie moulded together in 89-90. We were joking beforehand, if you can joke on a night like this, 26, 27 games unchanged. Aussie couldn't say the words Ross McLaren and Alan McLoughlin properly. It was one of the sort of standing jokes. But that midfield, which you were a part of, many say is one of the town's best ever midfields. What was it like to play in?
Yeah, Alan had this great talent where he'd just pick up the ball from deep, he'd get it in little pockets, and he was one of the ones that could actually run with it, dribble and go past people. If you had a look back at the amount of goals he scored where he'd beat people and slot it into the corner, and that he wasn't just a goal maker, he was a goal scorer as well, which throughout his career, wherever he went, he scored goals, and of course he scored a few famous ones as well for the Republic, and obviously the one at Wembley.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. Just small comments are coming in, and I'll read these out as we go through. This from Rob: terribly sad news today, puts things into perspective. R.I.P. Alan. From Mark: all our thoughts and prayers are with you all. Take care, everyone. From Marion: such sad news. He was a true gentleman, and he always came in my media room. Hello to you, Marion, at Swindon for a cuppa and a chat, especially when he just got back from the Academy away match. And from Adam: a sad day. R.I.P. to a true Swindon legend. From Rona: oh no, such sad news. R.I.P. Macca. Lots of those are going to come in. That goal, Tom, obviously people will also say, well, possibly it's a Gary Bennett own goal, but us of a Swindon persuasion will always give it to Alan McLoughlin, won't we?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think if you go from what Sky is now, I think if there's a shot on target, which I think it was going on target, and it gets a deflection, you actually do get the goal because it's an actual shot on target. And that's I will always credit to Alan. I'm sure Swindon Town fans will.
You mentioned the Republic. Of course, the aftermath of that Wembley game was demotion, which you'll remember only too well. But of course, Alan missed out on all that because immediately after the final, I think he jetted off to Italy, didn't he, to become part of the Republic's World Cup squad? Yeah,
that's right. I suppose in his own thoughts, it was probably better to be away from it because, again, that was obviously a devastating for the supporters, the club, and obviously, individually, it stopped us playing it at the highest level. And that, and I'm sure at that point, Alan, had reaped the highs and then obviously the lows. But then obviously he was in a World Cup tournament.
And of course, he scored that legendary goal for the Republic at Windsor Park in Belfast, which was a 1-1 draw 4 years later, took them to the World Cup in the States. So he's indelibly part of the Republic of Ireland's football history, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've always said there are certain players that are legends. Alan's a Swindon Town legend, and I'm sure, the people of Republic of Ireland will be certainly sending their condolences and their thoughts, to his family.
What was that season like? I mean, we spoke to you in greater length a couple of weeks ago, but in the dressing room, that spirit, it must have been fantastic. It was a wonderful time to be a Swindon supporter, and I would imagine a player. Yeah,
it was unbelievable, the camaraderie. All the players then lived in Swindon or just outside. Steve White lived in sort of Chipping Sodbury area, which was still fairly local. And but everybody, after the game, we sort of stayed together. There was that spirit amongst the players, and of course that then transfers onto the pitch when you have players training day in, day out, and then the amount of games that we actually went with the same team, same squad, is incredible. And hence you get the rewards. Everybody sort of could read each other, and that transferred into winning games. He scored 16 goals, I think, from midfield that season, which is incredible, really, for a midfield player, isn't it? Yeah, when you think Duncan Shearer and Steve White, I think they both got sort of 26, 27 goals each as well. And for a midfielder to get that amount of goals, as I say, Alan had this great knack of being able to get in little pockets and run at people. He'd either make a goal or score a goal. And obviously he was on a run of form that, goals just came naturally to him. And I think the one thing that comes across, and certainly in my dealings with him, I spent quite a bit of time with Alan, and I always remember one memorable journey to Charlton for the playoff semi-final with him. He co-commentated on the game with me, and he was a nice bloke, Tom. I mean, that was a bottom line, wasn't it? He was a nice bloke. That's the thing. Alan, as I say, not just a tremendous footballer, but as you say, as a person, very humble. I spent time with him not too long ago, 3 years ago, where we did our UEFA A licence renewal at Celtic Manor. So, we sort of reminiscing back, to when we were playing and catching up. And and Alan was obviously in charge of the academy boys, and we were talking about how things have changed over the periods, training methods, the lads in terms of don't do any cleaning and whatever. Something that I think the old school would like to see maybe come back, because I think it installs standards, discipline, etc. But Alan says it's never going to happen. What about your greatest memory? I'm guessing that goal would be pretty much up there, wouldn't it? Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, that will always stay in your mind, even though we didn't get the rewards from Wembley. You still can't change the amount of results that we had when those games were played, and you could never take that back.
Yeah, truly great player. More comments coming in. Thank you very much indeed for these. This is from Ian, a great player and a great team at Swindon, R.I.P. Alan. From Michael, R.I.P. Alan McLoughlin, a great player for STFC and the Republic. That 1890 team, 17 for Alan Mack, 27 each for Duncan Shearer and Steve White. My goodness, what we wouldn't have done with those goals this season. More from you in a moment, Tom. Thank you very much for those thoughts. James, you saw him as a footballer. What were your thoughts and memories of Alan McLoughlin?
Yeah, absolutely, Vic. I remember watching. I remember watching him many times play for the town. I actually saw him play for some of his other clubs as well, and obviously internationally as well. And I just remember him being a kind of an amazing midfield player. I got to meet him a couple of times. I didn't really know him as such, but I met him at a few Swindon events and what have you in the past. And I just thought he was the kind of guy you could just kind of chat to at the bar ultimately, and he'd just chat to anyone. And he was just a really nice guy. That's my overriding memory, really. And but I think as a footballer, he was just a class act, wasn't he? And obviously a Swindon legend. So truly sad day today. It really, really is. I mean, we knew he'd been unwell, but I don't think anyone necessarily knew quite how unwell he'd been. But I think, really, really sad day for everyone, really.
Yeah, Johnny, I know you didn't get to meet him, but you are a reporter with the Swindon Advertiser. I would imagine the paper will be paying tribute to Alan tomorrow. What are your thoughts? Because he is one of the legendary names of the football club. There's no question.
Yeah, I think I sort of poured through the tributes just now to put a little story up of a little snapshot of some of the tributes that people have paid. And I think the thing that kind of grabbed me was from a lot of the players, either the young ones or the former pros even. A lot of them talked about him giving them the belief, like the belief that they were good enough and the belief that they could go on to make something of themselves. And I think, as a coach, like that's huge, because a lot of the time when you're working with players that are in the circle of professional football, 99% of them will have the ability. That's why they're there. And sometimes it's, especially for sometimes, lower league players, it's about what goes on between the ears. So, you can look at, I don't know, any team years gone by, there are players that when the confidence is running through their veins, they're a different person. And I think it seems that, from what I've read, that Alan was one of those people that gave people that when he spoke, you listened, and when he said something, you didn't feel he was, being kind to you. You felt like he meant it. So that would be sort of my brief takeaway from what I've read.
Yeah, Pete Lango, of course, was a youth team player at the town. He's made many comments about Alan today, and very heartfelt comments as well. Just a final word then, as we pay tribute, Tom, on this. As a person, what will you remember most about Alan McLoughlin, the Alan McLoughlin that you shared so many great memories with? Yeah,
just a tremendous footballer, and as I say, very humble guy. And when you were on about teaching young lads, when we had those days together in Celtic Manor, his philosophy on how lads portray themselves, learning, listening, and just a tremendous guy. Anybody who came across him and had dealings with him would only ever speak so highly of him, and it's sad day today.
It certainly is, and lots more comments coming in. This is from Mark. What a top player Alan was. Great memories and good times. Thank you, Alan, R.I.P. And from Roger, a very sad day. Alan will be missed very much, and he will. There's no question about that. We continue to pay tribute to the great Alan McLoughlin throughout the course of this panel as we discuss other things as well. But our thoughts very much tonight with Tom, the rest of his teammates from that era, Alan's family, of course, and to his friends as well. Because he was very much a family man, Tom, wasn't he? That was very much his base, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. 2 daughters, obviously, wife, and they're so young. I mean, 54 years of age is no age. And obviously, like you said earlier, we've lost 2 now at such a young age, John Gittins as well. And and us, certainly our thoughts are with, his wife and, his 2 daughters.
Indeed. We'll continue to, if you'd like to leave your comments in our feed, we'll continue to mention them throughout the course of this. Right. Sad day, very sad day. And we do send our best thoughts. But James, let's turn our thoughts to other matters, because this is an incredibly crucial, I mean, it's hard work tonight to do this panel, as you'll imagine. But let's think of other things with Swindon Town at the moment. I think least of all is the game at Wigan on Sunday, because quite frankly, who really cares? But where are we at with the court case and the FA charges, as far as you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, in terms of the kind of ownership piece in the court case, there was obviously a deadline on Friday, just gone, for Lee Power to share due diligence documents with Clem Morfini, which was one of the actions that came out of the court case a few weeks ago. As we understand that as a trust, that happened on Friday. So Lee Power shared documents relating to the club and its current position financially, and all the due diligence documents that the court had asked him to share. He has done. So as we understand it, obviously Clem and his lawyers are now looking all through that information. And obviously, there is a court case, another court case occurring, we believe, next week. I don't think it's been necessarily confirmed the exact date, but I believe it's next week, whereby ultimately the judge will then look to see what Clem Morfini's response is to the due diligence, and ultimately see what the kind of outcome from that is. As we've already said, as a trust, we very much hope that Lee Power looks at the club itself and the best interest of the club, which we believe is to sell the club to Clem Morfini. We obviously still, Able are still there, but we don't know anything about them still. There's very little information on them. All we can kind of gather information-wise on Able is that, they're ultimately a kind of group of property investors. They invest in lots of different things, whether it be sports-related kind of investments, but also just general infrastructure related kind of building works, where there's ultimately some investment and money to be made, I guess, at the end of the day. And there's very little other information on them other than that. So, and we've had no further information directly from them. Obviously, we asked several weeks ago for them to reach out to us and reach out to the fan base to provide some details. That hasn't happened. So yeah, that's kind of where things are. So ultimately, it will go back to court next week, and we'll hopefully try and get some kind of outcome. And obviously as a trust, we call for, like I mentioned already, Lee Power to do the right thing in our minds, and that is to sell to Clem Morfini and not to Able. Ultimately, because we know what Clem Morfini's strategy is. He's published it. He's been very open and honest about what he wants to do, in terms of the club. We've spent a lot of time with him, listening to him and talking to him about his plans, and obviously doing our own due diligence on him as well. And that's why we hope that Lee Power, does the right thing in our opinion and sells to him. But I guess we'll find out a little bit more next week. So that's where we are as it stands at the moment.
All right, James, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. This is from Pete. I don't understand why Able are so quiet. Surely they'd want to win the fan base over rather than be under the shadow of and be associated with the current ownership. Johnny, how difficult is this to follow as a reporter? Because, the football is secondary at the minute. I mean, well, it is and it isn't, because, there's so much up in the air. We're coming to the end of the season. We don't have a manager. We don't have an owner, probably. We don't have a squad for next season. We don't have season ticket sales up and running. We don't have a pre-season schedule. My goodness, there's a lot to do, isn't there?
Yes, there's a lot and then some, I think. As for how difficult it is to follow, it's difficult for smart people to follow. And, that makes it impossible to follow for someone like me. So I'm glad our court reporter Tom's handling most of this, because I don't know. I don't know. There are no words. There's just no words. Every day, a different story comes out, and you're surprised yet you're not surprised, because something else basically goes wrong, or something else kind of comes to light, and you think, wow, just wow. And like Tommy Wright said the other day, I think the first thing the club needs to do, whoever that is appoint a manager. But then who would want to kind of come here? Because there's no. In football, there's not a lot of certainty, but even by football standards, there's no certainty at Swindon Town at the moment. So I don't know. Who knows? I don't think it'll be the quietest summer on record. That's for sure.
Are you still banned from asking questions, by the way?
Yeah, as far as I know, there was a brief moment of hope where Tommy Wright let me ask questions after, I think it was MK, but not had any communication from the club, and after that, every press has been swiftly moved on before I can draw breath. So I presume that is still the case.
Goodness me. How much are you following this, Tom? Because, you would have been through a similar experience way back when you were 89, 90, and all the things that were going on in the background then. How much did that affect you as a player?
It didn't really. Obviously it was there, but we weren't aware of as much as probably what was going on in the background. We were there just playing football, and I don't think, not like today, the media and whatever, with Twitter and Facebooks and God knows else what, that wasn't around when we were playing. So you mainly just concentrated on playing football. But the club at the moment is it's a mess. It is a real mess. I'm with everybody else. The sooner Lee Power leaves Swindon Town, I think the better. And that, I don't know where I'm being controversial. I think he was involved with Rushden in Diamonds when they went under. And that's what worries me. And that, there's, like you said, so much news and it changes every day. Who's the owner of the club? How do you not know who owns a football club? It's beyond me. But that's where it stands at the moment. It's
Johnny,
just for me.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
Yeah, just for me that the quicker it gets resolved, because at the moment we're on about a manager. There is no structure in the club whatsoever. Did you say there's no pre-season? There's no season tickets. How can you run a football club like that? It seems to me it's trying to run it into the ground. But
yeah, this is a point from Jim as well, of course, because of a situation which we needn't comment on. We don't have a groundsman at the moment, do we? So yeah. I'm not even sure who's looking after the ground at the moment.
I think we've got a temporary groundsman that we've brought in while Marcus is away, shall we say? Yes. I believe we brought someone in that used to work at Forest Green Rovers and has been involved in Swindon pitch previously. We brought him in to ultimately fill the gap. Because actually the pitch has been looking better over the last few weeks.
It has, yes, it has looked. Yeah.
So obviously he's made a bit of a difference, but so they have got I don't know what the contract is. I don't know how long he's supposed to be there for, but we do have someone that's qualified ultimately that's looking after the pitch. But I think the other thing as well is that there's to Alan to Tom's point as well. I think there's a lot of individuals behind the scenes that have left as well. So you've not got a manager. You don't have you don't have a kind of structure or strategy for next season. We've got no season tickets. Key personnel behind the scenes, like the finance director, has left recently. Who was obviously quite senior. It's been, the club's been run on a skeleton staff, and it's just exceptionally worrying. And I think I'm pretty certain that once the due diligence has been looked over, there'll be a number of other elements that kind of come out of the woodwork as well, where potentially there's other issues down the line that we need to deal with, or a new owner will need to deal with. And we believe as a trust that, if we've obviously, the Football League have offered certain kind of certain kind of finance to support clubs, like a kind of fund, if you like, for clubs that are really, really suffering. We believe potentially that the club may well have used that facility to pay wages over the last few months in some way. Again, no firm evidence, but we believe that might have happened. In which case, if that has happened, it adds additional restrictions to what we can do as a football club until that money is repaid. So it does mean, for example, that we wouldn't be able to sign players, or we won't be able to sign players over a certain salary level or cap, and the number of players we'd be able to sign will be restricted. And so ultimately, it's almost like a mini transfer embargo to some extent until that money's paid back to the Football League. So, like I said, that's something that has been talked about. Whether or not that is the case, we don't know. But obviously, that will come out as part of the due diligence, as part of the court case. So probably we'll hear about a little bit more about that next week, if that is the case, obviously. But it's really probably one of the worst situations I've certainly ever seen in my life as a Swindon Town fan, I have to say. So
yeah, I can't remember many worse. This is from Pete. How could a person contemplate being manager of Swindon Town at the moment? There is no certainty at all about anything. From Keith, fingers crossed Clem comes in, and then he gets Richie Wellens in. From Paul, Thomas hit the nail on the head. How can you not know who owns the club? This from Sean. How on earth did Lee Power pass the fit and proper test? Well, that's for the Football League to answer, I guess. From Steve, how does the trust know that Lee Power supplied the documents to Clem Morfini? Is the trust in contact with his representatives? From Lee, Tom has got it spot on. From Andy, it's worrying when a legend like Tom is fearful of the future. And from Shane, nice Barnet, Vic. Well, I can tell you, Shane, thank you very much. But it made no difference to my footballing ability this afternoon today. So thank you very much indeed for that. Johnny, so many questions coming in that we don't know the answer to. And, when are we going to hear from the FA? When are we going to hear whether all those documents have been passed through to the relevant people? Have you heard anything from the Football Association? I know yesterday was a bank holiday and they do take their time, but have we heard anything?
No, the footballers, like the FA, I mean, rightly or wrongly, I guess is probably the right approach to take, but they don't say anything until it's like a done deal. I tried asking them, even, I can't remember stuff about transfers or something like that back in January, and they basically don't comment on anything. So it's pointless trying to get anything out of them. And then, it's a case of it's effectively a case of waiting for it to go to court and hoping that it all comes out in the wash and not everything's stained, basically.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, we've had a response from the FA to the trust's kind of open letter asking for them to effectively, make sure that they punish, if proven guilty, they punish the individuals rather than the football club. And the response we got was largely on the lines of, once the information has been passed back and the FA makes some kind of judgment as to whether they are guilty and what have you, that certain kind of pleas, if you like, can be passed to the FA, but that has to come through the club. So that would mean that we as a trust would need to, and the supporters club as well, would need to pass that information to the club to then pass to the FA. It's the way the protocol works. But if you think about it, if the supporters groups were ultimately asking the FA to consider the club and exclude them from any kind of issues or sanctions or what have you, and really focus on the individuals, do you really think Lee Power is going to do that? Probably not. He's not going to want to put more emphasis on him and take it away from the football club in terms of any punishment. So we've had some further dialogue. We've also got both MPs involved locally in Swindon, and they've reached out to the FA asking for a meeting to talk about this in more detail. The last I heard that they had an acknowledgement, I believe, from the FA, but there was no kind of confirmation as to whether that meeting was going to go ahead. But I would agree with Johnny. I think largely they don't respond to individuals other than the individuals that are actually, that are part of the particular issue. So I'd imagine at the moment it's only Lee Power and Michael Standing in the football club that are getting any communications from them. So.
Okay, Tom, if you're a player, right, in the middle of this, you've got one more game to play, which, is a completely and utterly dead rubber. There's nothing on it. We're going to say Swindon are down. But, some people have contracts with the club next season, but don't know whether they have contracts with the club because who knows who owns the club. How unsettling is it for a footballer?
Well, I'd certainly be very worried as an individual. Of course, as a pro, you always give your all. There's no way I've ever walked out on a pitch and thought, well, it doesn't mean anything. You play for your football club. You play, yourself, your own individual performance, and that. So, with that side, if I was involved with the football club now, I'd be looking to, play young players that may well be staying around for the next year, 2 years, depending on their contract. And certainly these players that are either on loan or you're not going to give a contract to, then, you're better off just like giving a young player a debut last game of the season. It doesn't matter the result. It's just about giving somebody a chance to make a debut for, your football club. If your contract was out, you'd certainly be very, very worried as an individual. And even if you've got a year or 2 year contract, is there going to be a football club around at the moment? Because it's in such a mess that, of course, you're going to go away and wondering whether you're going to be offered a contract or you're going to be told that the club is going under. Because
at the end of the day, Tom, footballers are people who've got families, they've got mortgages, they don't live on some great sort of mysterious spatial plane, do they? They're people who are working for a living.
Of course, yeah. You go in every day to the football club, and that's where your place of work is. That you want to perform for the football club, no matter what time of season, what game it is, and that, like you say, you've got wife and you've got kids and you've got bills to pay. You want to be settled in life.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in, so forgive me for reading them all out because there are a lot of them. This from Lee. I feel Lee Power is desperate to sell to Abel. We know the Highworth development's in Lee Power's name. Well, I'll ask you about that in a minute, Johnny. How do we know he hasn't done a deal for the club to pay rent to Lee Power once Abel come in? From Dan, how could the FA and EFL not see what was going on with Power and him involving Standing? Surely LP must have known he was breaching the rules. From Michael, do we know Clem's football plan if he buys the club, manager, etc.? Well, I'll give that one to you in a minute, James, because you've spoken to him, I know. And from Derek Elston, we all know Derek, a long-standing Town fan, home and away. I have to say I'm more concerned that we will survive with no information coming out of the club, no money going into the club. What players would ever want to take the chance of joining the club with the mess we're in? And from Dan, does the panel fear that we could be heading the same way as Southend and possibly out of the EFL next season if things aren't sorted out quickly? Johnny, I've got to say, I said last week, if we were to finish lower middle table in League Two next season, I'd be more than delighted. That would, I think that would be tremendous. What do we know about the Highworth situation, Johnny? What is your reading of that?
Again, I'm not the one that's dealing with it, so I'm. I read what sort of Tom's writing. I'm not sure. James might be able to correct me on this, but I'm not actually sure if there's anything that says it is in Lee Power's name. I think it was supposed to be in the name of the club. So that would suggest to me that if a new owner took over, it would then be said new owners. But I'm not sure. James might be able to correct me on that. Is that right?
I think as we understand it, the planning applications are in the name of the club, which probably means the club's paid for it in terms of the planning applications. But in terms of ownership, we don't think the club it's been put in the club's name in terms of ownership. Simply that the planning applications have gone in for the housing and the training ground and all that other good stuff is ultimately in the club's name. It's slightly baffling as to why that is. But, I think in terms of the rent side of things, I think there was a question about the rent. I think Lee Powell said that he was going to, and again, whether we can take his word for it or not, I don't know, based on what we now know. But, I think he talked about peppercorn rent ultimately for the club in terms of the training facilities. Now, we all know that the money he's looking to make from the training ground is more so from the stables and ultimately the building, the building plot and the housing that he's looking to put on that. That's where the money is, not necessarily the training ground. I think the training ground is something which obviously we desperately want, but I think ultimately it's the other bits that he's more concerned about because, that's the bits that make him the money, really. So I think that's our understanding anyway.
Tom, where did you train in your day? Was it out the back on the extension?
Yeah, when I first came, it was along Shrivenham Road, the old railway.
Oh, the old railway one. Yeah. I remember that, yeah.
Grass was about 2 foot long.
Yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, and then was the county ground extension. And then later on, when Aussie came along, that was when we first moved up to Dunbar. What was Dunbar then?
That's right. I remember. Yeah, that railway thing. I actually played out there. It was pretty horrendous, wasn't it?
And I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, you used to. I'm not kidding you. The grass used to be about 2 foot long, and that. It was just, I've never trained on anything like that.
So can you understand then why Swindon have never sorted out a proper training base? I mean, it seems to me they were up at Wanborough with Glenn Hoddle for a while, weren't they? But, they've been at Calm as well. But there's never been an actual... I mean, I'm not far from Exeter City's training ground at Cat and Fiddle, which is a magnificent establishment. It always has been, and yet why can't Swindon come up with something like that? Why haven't they?
It's beyond me, because the club have had such good times, and why they've never settled on a regular training ground, either buying it or, like you say, leasing it in some way so that there's some sort of settled training facilities for, not just the first team, but for the kids as well. The academy boys, it's never, we've sort of jumped all over the place. I was at Swindon as well when we were using Swindon Supermarine, and so it's been jumping from pillar to post for too long for a club the size of Swindon.
It's crazy. Yeah, and as footballers, you want to know where you're going to train every day, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, we turned up at Supermarine and the chains were on the gates because we hadn't paid the bills, and so that was, I've actually been there when that happened, and as players, we sort of laugh and joke about it, but obviously something happened behind the scenes. Bills hadn't been paid, so the chains were put on. The minibus wasn't coming through the gates.
So what did you do? Jump over the gate? What happened? Where'd you go?
That was I used to know the guy at Supermarine, Bruno, who used to run the complex, and he just says, "You haven't paid the bills. You're not training. You're not using our facilities." And that's it was back in the van and back to the county ground and train on the pitch.
Wow, unbelievable. It just seems amazing to me that it's something they've never sorted out. I always remember Jeff Warren used to get quite angry about his pitch. The groundsman once, he always used to say football grounds would be lovely if players didn't play football on it. And you can imagine, as a groundsman, they prepare these wonderful surfaces and then you footballers go and ruin it by playing on them.
Yeah, that's all groundsmen, though. Every groundsman I've known.
Marcus,
don't want you on the pitch.
Yeah. More Alan McLoughlin messages, which of course we're happy to read out. This from, or not happy because we wish you didn't have to, but you take the point I'm making. From Gary, R.I.P. Alan, a true Swindon legend. From Keith, R.I.P. Alan Mack, what a player he was. From Stephen, R.I.P. Alan Mack. Hopefully the club, trust, supporters club can arrange for a lasting memorial to such a Swindon legend. Well, there's been a wonderful banner, hasn't there, James, on the Stratton Bank recently. I think it was Great Western Reds who did that. But it really was fantastic, and it looked great. Trust Supporters Club can arrange for a lasting memorial to such a Swindon legend. But there's been a wonderful banner, hasn't there, James, on the Stratton Bank. I don't quite know what's going on there, but I'm hearing myself again, which is never a good thing. Did you hear my point, James?
No, I missed it. I don't know what was going on there. There was some stereo going on at some point.
Yes. No, the point I was making was there's been a wonderful banner on the Stratton Bank, which I think the Great Western Reds put up, and it looked magnificent. So that one way of paying tribute to him. But, it would be lovely to think that we could come up with something in the future for him.
I know, I completely agree. And you're right. The banner was something that the Great Western Reds came to both the Trust and Supporters Club about probably a while ago now, actually about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and basically said, look, we know Alan's not very well. Let's ultimately let's try and come up with something. And the Great Western Reds come up with the idea of the kind of flag, what have you. So we kind of hurriedly kind of got that kind of created, and the three parties paid for it between them. And I think it was wonderful. I think it's absolutely amazing. It looks great. But I think Alan is such a Swindon kind of legend, and I know our chairman Steve is very keen on putting some statues around the county ground at some point for Swindon legends. Don Rogers and Trollope and what have you. But I actually think kind of Alan falls into that kind of category really, and I think we should look to do something that's more long term to recognise him and other other kind of heroes and Swindon legends. Ultimately, a lot of other clubs do it. They've either got like a museum or they've got certain areas of the ground where they've got bricks with people's names and what have you, and something like that I think would be absolutely amazing. And I know having spoken to Clem about a number of topics, that's something that he's quite passionate about as well, recognising the heroes of the past and doing something along those lines. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to do that. And I was just earlier on, I scribbled down that midfield, Tom, at Wembley. Jones, McLoughlin, Foley, McLaren. That's not a bad quartet, that, is it?
I don't know, you tell me. But no, I mean, a lot of good players in that team. As you say, Alan was slightly different. Ross was more of a patroller, good passer, long range passing. Steve Foley was the ratter that get around the pitch and upset a few people with his Scouse voice as well. And Alan was the sort of player that everybody wants in their team because he frightens defences and he runs past people, and that's the sort of player he was. Hence, that's why he scored so many goals at that time.
Yeah, fantastic midfield. And Stigger Foley, of course, got that great goal on Blackburn, didn't he, in the playoff semi-final up at Ewood Park, which kind of set you on your way, really. Fabulous goal. Yeah. Right, let's lots of comments coming in, I should say. Power and Anderson have absolutely no integrity. This from Anthony. They've been an absolute disgrace since day one. We'd like to say that we would have some comment from them to put their side of it, but I think everybody knows it's difficult to get anything from the club at the moment. It's owned privately, but the club has been named as the planning application client. This goes back to Highworth. And also, is there litigation between Fraser Digby and Lee Power over the brokering of the deal? Well, that's something we cannot comment on. STFC played at Nationwide under Glenhull, but I think it was up at Wombrah, a training base up there. From Jason, Highworth was purchased partly from the trust of a supporter who passed away and STFC PLC. And Macca deserves a statue outside the players' entrance. And from Steve, name the town end, the McLoughlin stand. Well, we need a John Trollope stand. I think that's fair to say. And, hey, who am I to say that isn't right? The Alan McLoughlin stand. We need something, definitely. Right, let's, Richie Wellens was at the county ground on Saturday/Sunday. Johnny, did you speak to him?
I didn't speak to him this weekend, but I spoke to him earlier today, actually. Just about just about other things, really. I spoke to him about the charity game. We talked about the Super League a little bit. Obviously, I know his links with Man United. Spoke about what he wants to do next. We touched on a little bit about the start of the season with Swindon, but he was in fine form. I think I texted him, said, "It's Johnny from the Advert. Do you mind chatting?" And he said, "For you, no." And then quickly text again to say, "I'm just joking. Ring me this afternoon." So he hasn't changed, which is nice. It's nice to speak to him again. So yeah, we've got I've got a couple of stories that I'll knock up and I'll share with everyone in the next couple of days.
Yeah, spill the beans, Johnny, says this particular quote. And I was about to ask the same question. I think he spoke to some fans on the way out, didn't he, on Saturday, and said, well, I wasn't privy to the conversation, but somewhere along the lines that he might think about coming back to Swindon if the owner changed. So what is your feeling having spoken to him? He obviously has a great affection for the club, and I think the fan base is pretty split about whether they'd want him back or not. But what's your reading of that?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world we'd all absolutely love him back. I personally, if you told me to put money on it, I'd say no. I don't know. I just don't think it will happen. There was a couple of things he said. We didn't really say anything about Swindon, to be honest. He just sort of said that he was offered a couple of jobs. He was contacted over a couple of little bits to the end of the season. He said he didn't really want to do that because, and I can see his point. Why would you come in for the last 5 games? A club's fate is largely already decided by then, and then you have to make a decision on players' futures who you don't even know. And rightly or wrongly, the players would turn around and go, tell them which way to go if they don't know someone. So that's really harsh. So I can see his point on that, and I think he said he's kind of going to take the summer and look for jobs and kind of apply for jobs in the summer. My feeling, if I had to guess where he'd go, I'd say that Doncaster job's got his name written all over it. Like, it just fits. Like, club legend. He's a good manager. They play the right way under Darren Moore. They're showed what a good team they are. I think they keep most of their players. There was only about something like 4 or 5 that are out of contract. And I think all of them were offered new deals. They were one of the lowest out of contract teams. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love him to come back, but it's up to him. I don't know whether a new owner might help. And let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, fair enough. This is from Rob. Spot on, Vic. John Trollope has had scant recognition from the club. This from Sean. I think Sean was the one who was instrumental in getting people to talk to him outside the County Ground Hotel on Saturday. I spoke to Richie Wellens on Saturday, and he said it wasn't all his choice to go. From Steve, what's the story regarding Steve Evans? I don't know if that's Steve Evans who's sending it in about Steve Evans, but it'd be interesting. From Rob, no, as opposed to Wellens coming back, I would think. From Andy, sorry, I don't agree with Richie coming back. From Sean, yeah, this is it. I got Richie Wellens to come over and I said it would take big cojones to talk to the fans, but he did. So fair play on that. Tom, you're in football. You know football people. The club is, as we've already described, a complete and utter basket case right now. But if you're a prospective manager, does that put you off, or do you still want to come and be a manager of Swindon Town?
Of course. I mean, if you look in League 2 now, I think Bolton go up. Swindon, for me, are the biggest club in that division. So who wouldn't want to be manager of Swindon Town? Certainly, there'll be a lot of applicants if that is the case. Regardless of turmoil and disruption, the way it is at the moment, there'll still be a lot of good people that can see the potential in the club. It's got a good fan base. It's a big town, and there'll be a lot of managers looking, to apply and maybe change the fortunes, certainly of stuff that's happening on the pitch, because obviously no club likes being relegated. Club's on its belly at the moment, but there'll be certain people out there that think they can turn it around, as a lot of people think.
I think the thing is, Tom, we're fed up with this bouncing backwards and forwards, and are we becoming an established League Two team? And that's what worries me, Tom, about Swindon, because to me, they're sort of top end third division, possibly lower end championship. That's always been the way of looking at them. Except from your time, of course, when you would have challenged in the first division. I've no doubt you would have done mid-table-ish. But do you see the point I'm making? We are looking at Swindon becoming an established League Two team, which is nonsensical, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it shouldn't be the case. Swindon should be an established, like I say, I think championship side. The size of the town is huge now. The infrastructure is there. You've got the companies that should be, investing in the club. But I think, with the turmoil and who's the ownership, there's obviously, people thinking who wants to invest in sponsorship, in a club that's, like I say, you don't even know who the owner is. And, that's not great. But would there be a lot of managers applying for the job? Of course there will.
This is from Rob, and it was no to Steve Evans, Vic. I'd have Richie back. Thanks, Rob, for clearing that up. So then, James, Steve Evans. I don't know. He's like the pantomime villain, isn't he, for Swindon fans? We all go back to the Crawley days, don't we? And indeed the Boston days, many of us think about. What's your view on Steve Evans?
What should I say now?
Yeah. Please be careful.
Yeah, I will be careful. I promise. When I saw it over the weekend, I think it was over the weekend, it kind of came out. And the worrying thing is, it's come from Alan Nixon, isn't it, from the Sun, who pretty much 9 out of 10 times gets most stuff right. He's obviously got his finger on the pulse with the right people. I know Lee Power personally has said several times that we've tried to get Steve Evans to come in as manager. I think before we offered the job to Richie, he tried to get Steve Evans on board. I think I don't like him personally. Things I've seen. I don't think he's the right person for Swindon Town, to be perfectly honest. I think we want someone more in the mould of Richie, that's going to galvanise the club, galvanise the fan base, look to engage properly with the fans. I'm not sure Steve Evans is that person. I don't know him personally, but from what I do know and what I've seen, no. And I think, the fact that he's got a bit of a, what's the right word? Baggage, shall we say, with some issues that he's had in the past, certainly with Boston. Maybe allegedly, possibly him and Power would get on quite well if Mr. Power was still there. I don't know, but I think, it's a big no from me. Certainly, I just don't think he's the right person. And I would also question, Gillingham are mid-table in League One. Why would you want to go to a League Two club that's basically got issues off the field? Surely he's better off sticking with Gillingham, unless he's fallen out with someone there. I don't know, but it all just seemed very odd. I know Lee Power does know him quite well, so I don't know. But then if Lee Power's not going to be here, hopefully, it's a bit of a strange one. But it's the worrying thing for me is who it's come from, the rumor, because he does normally get things right. So.
Yeah, Johnny, he's got. Whether you like him or dislike him, you can't argue with his record, can you? I mean, his record is decent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a criticism even I've had for a long, long time. That I've, whether you like it or not, he makes teams like nastier. They're difficult to play against. Swindon have always had, well, at least in the time I've been watching them, have always been quite a soft team. They might play good football, but then we never. We're never able to sort of put our elbows in or, just sort of battle past teams. We either have to beat them nicely or we don't beat them at all. So in that regard, then maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. In almost every other regard that there are possibly could be considered, I would echo James's sentiment. Like, it's just, I don't think he would fit. And yeah, I would much prefer like a young kind of hungry coach that has ideals and wants to take a club in the right direction with, good optimistic football, if you want to call it that. So, just someone like, I think in the last, if you look at the managers over, I don't know, probably the last 10 years, maybe more, that we've appointed, more or less as a rule, the younger ones, the fresher ones, have done a bit better. You think Richie Wellens, we go kind of Cooper, Di Canio to a point. Like, he was, not young, but he was fresh, and I think it was his first job, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And then you look at the older guys that we've had, and it just has invariably not gone well. So I think that there's a kind of a lesson. We seem to be a club that works for a kind of young, like idealistic manager. And Richie was sort of, near enough the perfect mold where he really did try and engage with the fans. He went out into the community and tried to engage with the young fans. So that's something that whoever comes in, however this club goes, like Tom said something about, the town is massive, but the fan base is declining because it's getting older and there are fewer kids that are coming to watch Swindon Town. If the club wants to go back in the right direction again, ultimately really getting up to where we all think that they deserve to be, the infrastructure in terms of getting out to the community and engaging with people out there, that has got to be one of the highest priorities. Forget the manager, forget the players. You can do it with, look at Cambridge. They've got some decent players, but they had Paul Mullin and Carl Nor that we apparently didn't want, and they've done it right. So the players, I think, the players are, look at you can get promoted with like an average team. Teams do it all the time, but in terms of the long-term health of the club, if we want it to go in the right direction, we want to become the club that we know it can be, because this is a town of 200,000 people plus. You've got to get out into the community, really engage with everyone, obviously, I don't know what our version would be, but like a Petr Cech, someone as a club legend that goes out there and engages and is that sort of middleman. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest kind of issues that we've got among all of the big issues that we've got.
Yeah, don't forget a lot of the town fans come from outside the town, from places like Devon, things like that. There's some more comments coming in from Sean King. Contract update for Scotty Twine. I don't know. This is what Sean says from Saturday. Offered a new deal on more money, but it would make him amongst the lowest paid players there still. He's going to sit down with agent Brian Howard. Tom, people like Scott Twine, one of the few bankable assets of Swindon Town Football Club right now, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. I know Twiney, like when he came on loan at Chippenham. Good little player, great talent. He's now like filling out, and his potential, he's playing regular first team games. He's only going to get better. I actually see his dad on Saturday at the Wootton Bassett. He was watching the cricket, so I just missed him. So people like Twiney, you've got to look to keep. He's an asset, and that as for a football club, I think they really need to sit down, and whoever's in ownership, as you've said, you've got to get the right sort of manager. If you want to go for a young, fresh-faced, new ideas, you've got to play good football, but you need a bit of mixture of everything to have a successful team. Whether they're looking in that direction, whoever it is that's got to come in has got to really sit down and look at the infrastructure of the club. And as you say, there's plenty of players within the town. Don't forget that from my day, I've stayed around, still live in Swindon. When you go back talking about Alan McLoughlin, don't forget he was a Manchester boy. But he stayed in Swindon, for the rest of his career. And, that says something, that he had an affection with not just the town, but, obviously the football club and the people that live in the town. As you say, this is a huge, big town. It could be a city. And that everything's there. You just need the right ingredients to get it going again.
Yeah, we're going to come to a close, and I'll come back to you, Tom, for a final word on Alan very shortly. This is from Rob. Richie encouraged entertaining football and bagged good results. That's all that really matters, surely. From Jason, Evans is too similar to Sheridan, swears a lot at his players. From Sean, Steve Evans once called us a circus when he was at Crawley. We remember those days. From Rob, well, he wasn't wrong currently. That's about Alan Nixon, I guess. From Dan, would anyone want Lee Peacock as manager? Knows the club and the young players that we have. From Ashley, I'd have Evans. At least we would fight and battle. Has promotions from this league. Would we care about him if he got us winning games of football? Richie fits the bill. He only went because you know who was after the compo. From Andy, our most successful managers over the last 20 years have been first-timers. From Jason, Tom Jones, a new job for you, getting out into the community. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. And from Ashley, people will travel to London to watch teams. You need to get fans into the ground and work with the community, even put buses on with cheaper prices to encourage more fans. Thank you very much indeed for all your comments. Tom, let's end where we began then. And our, Johnny and James, thank you both very much indeed. How about Gareth Barry becoming our new manager? Well, who knows what's going to work out there. Johnny and James, thank you very much indeed for your time this evening. Tom, your final words on the great Alan McLoughlin as we pay tribute to him tonight.
Just a pleasure to have known him. May he just rest in peace. He was not just, as I say, a terrific footballer, a lovely guy as well, and a pleasure that I've known him. And that's it's just a real sad day.
Well, Tom, we appreciate you joining us tonight because I know it can't be easy. And a lot of your teammates, I know, are feeling like you, very sad tonight, as we all are in the Swindon football community. So thank you very much indeed for that. Chris, I think it only remains for me to say R.I.P. Alan McLoughlin.
Yeah, very sad day. Thank you very much, everybody, for your involvement. Just a quick update on where we are next week. We've got a triple header next week. So Monday night, we're doing a season review. Tuesday night, we've got our Player of the Season award. And on Wednesday, yay! That was hard, that one. And on Wednesday, we have club historian Dick Mattick giving us another interview, some more history to learn. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next week, and we'll just leave you with this.